wanted to start off with a really big story today, gentlemen. That the government, this is the UK government, are looking at changing legislation, bringing in the independent football regulator. But essentially, one of their proposals that's being put forward is that no club in English football, no club in the English pyramid, it will be allowed to be owned either directly or in association with, or by a family member of, or by a fund connected to any state, or royal family, or government leaders. So essentially, when you look at the Premier League teams, Man City and Newcastle, if this legislation goes through, would have to find new owners, Sheikh Mansour and PIF, because of their connections to royal families, running of countries, sovereign funds, would no longer be able to own Premier League clubs. Toon Tactics, I'm sure you've read this article today. The article does state this will be a hard thing to get through. Some don't think it will happen. I don't personally think it, but it does appear that there are some clubs. There are a lot of MPs. You've got to remember, the Prime Minister of England right now is a big Arsenal fan, and Keir Starmer. They're looking to put through a legislation, a new law in the country that would mean your owners would have to sell. Is it frustrating to see this going on?
That's a really good question. Is it frustrating? I think, and I read the article from your show as well today, which was really good. I think the MP who's putting, I don't know if it's MP, he's putting it, or secretary is putting it through, Lord Bassam, actually previously worked for KPMG, from the large, massive corporate companies, and actually has been previously suspected of doing friends for favors, handing out contracts to said private companies and corporations. So the same corporations are no friends to states and governments as well. So I say that to say this, that it's not overly surprising that he is trying to push forward legislation that would not allow or ban or stop or prevent the ownership of state ownership of clubs. I think the wider question obviously is for people whether clubs should be owned by the states or not, and I'm sure that's another debate we can talk about later. But in terms of frustrating, it's only frustrating when, and I think you actually said it today, I was listening to your show with the guys, it's only frustrating when, similar to maybe when our own teams are kind of criticized, and clearly people have biases and agendas, they don't really want to seek to have an objective or a kind of thought about it type of thing. But otherwise, I think it's just another day in the office for Newcastle and Man City fans, really.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I want to throw this out to the wider panel. I mean, there obviously are some MPs. We know there are football clubs that would back this. There are probably millions of... If there was a referendum in the country, you'd probably find that people would vote in favor of this kind of rule because people would just think about it based on the here and now. But is it right? Is it wrong for... And I know that the only two kind of state-connected owners we have are at Newcastle and at Man City. But is it right that theoretically the prime minister or president of a country, the king or queen of a country, could own a football club? Is this something that we should be looking to ban in football, or should it be an open market? Whoever wants to take that can.
I mean, it should be an open market, to be honest. I feel like it's just too many rules and regulations in place already anyway. So you see it with Newcastle, right? They got the richest owners, but it's not even like their owners are able to spend a lot of money anyways, because there's already regulations that are in place to kind of stop these state-funded clubs from just going crazy and offering players like $1 billion a week or whatever kind of nonsense. So now, what would be the purpose of saying that they can no longer own clubs? I feel like it's just jealousy, to be honest. Like, everybody complains about like City's owners, Newcastle's owners, because they're not your owners, right? Everybody says that's a problem when these people like get involved with buying clubs and stuff because they might do dodgy business or whatever. But if they were buying, let's say, Spurs, or if they were buying Arsenal, right, like, then everybody else is like, they'd be very happy with it. So I don't really see like the benefit of banning it. And also, do the Saudis, Qataris, don't they also do a lot of things in the UK as well? Like when they come in and they buy Newcastle, they buy Man City, don't they add to like the infrastructure? They create jobs, they do a lot of different things. So if you're already going to have all these rules in place to where they can't even spend their money unless their club brings in a certain amount of money, then there'd be no reason to say that they cannot buy clubs. So I think it's just a waste of time, to be honest. It should be an open market.
Will, do you know what validates what you're saying, right? I'm not saying the whole fan base did, but United and Liverpool fans, when we were linked to Qatar and whatnot, some of us were over the moon. So it literally validates what you're saying. I think it's from a standpoint of jealousy. And I feel like if you was to ban it, it will keep the elite at the top. Because if we're being completely honest here, it's kind of to keep the red cartel at the top. I think Liverpool, United, and Arsenal kind of don't want anyone to take it. Let's be honest. Terry's laughing.
Red cartel, stand up, man.
It's kind of it's kind of
Yellow cartel, yellow.
I feel like it gives another club. Let's say you get a mad financial takeover. It gives another club similar to what happened to City. They might have a 5-10 year span of success and then match us, and then it makes the Premier League more competitive. So I don't think it should be banned personally.
100%.
On that, just say real quickly. First of all, the weird comment from Tyrone that says, facts, Terry is pushing certain agendas. If you actually watch my content about this, I'm not an advocate of banning it. So I can be objective and ask questions as a host. That doesn't mean I'm an advocate. That's a very weird thing to say, Tyrone, but I suppose you're someone that struggles with toasters. So maybe that's hard to comprehend. But look, I understand when people say it's about keeping the red cartel at the top. I understand that point of view. Where I disagree with it, by and large, is Brighton didn't vote for PSR rules to help Man United stay at the top. I know there's this theory that those clubs stay in line because they're told what to do by the red cartel. They're not. They're voting based on what's right for their club. But where I equally agree with you, if a billionaire worth 200 million wanted to buy Brighton next week and did buy Brighton next week, Brighton Football Club, its board and its fans would change its opinion on PSR rules and would change its opinions on this. And this is the issue. And by the way, if Newcastle still had Mike Ashley as owner, and it was, I don't know, Sunderland that got bought by the Saudi Arabian fund, they would probably, as fans, advocate for this being banned and for there to be PSR rules, because I don't think this is about red cartels, blue cartels, claret and blue cartels. I think this is about every club, every kind of fan base, typically speaking, will push for what's best for them. The only element I agree with is there has to be checks and balances. The reason I say that is this. Yes, there's always been wealthier clubs. When Liverpool got in the 70s, I think it was, they're sponsored by, I think it was Littlewoods that sponsored them. It was such an astronomically big deal. It made them richer than everybody else. However, that was based on years of success that led to that. I'm okay with that. Where we need to be careful, though, is it was always millionaires or multi-millionaires that own clubs in these eras. The problem you have is, what I don't like the idea of is it being open season for people being able to spend what they want when you have people as rich as Newcastle. And the reason I say that is because, that's what I'm saying. So I'm up for there being rules, that checks and balances. But if you've got the checks and balances, then I don't understand what the issue is with somebody from those countries. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of United fans that have this weird idea that Sir Jim and Ineos are broke billionaires. Why are they not? We're in all this financial difficulty, but why are they not paying their debt off? Because there's no mileage in it. They could write off every single debt tomorrow. Doesn't help with PSR. Because when it comes to the PSR balance, club owners can only put 90 million pounds over 3 years in. So if we write the debt off and then make a 250, 300 million pound profit in the year on the accounts, great. But every single part of that profit that is directly from investment from the owners or or connected to, so therefore there's more profit because we're not spending as much money on loans, as an example, all of that is written off when it comes to PSR, and we would still show a loss, as an example. We still wouldn't be, from a PSR point of view, in the plus. So there's no mileage in Ineos paying that off, because it doesn't help the situation. It won't suddenly be like we can spend 500 million pound in a transfer window. It doesn't work in that way. So listen, I think it's crazy that I don't like the idea of this. I don't also understand how the country can ban Saudi Arabia, Qatar, whatever country from buying a football club, but yet take £1 trillion off of them to invest into Boeing, trillions of pounds to put into the UK's franchises of Starbucks, billions of. But the UK government, by the way, these absolute cretins are happy to take money from the Middle East, from Russia, from China. By the way, no issue with any of those countries from me. Pump that money into the property market in London, make it almost impossible for the working class communities to afford to buy properties in London, but now they want to ban them from owning football clubs. For me, there is such duplicity in this, it stinks.
I 100% agree. And listen, the thing is, yeah, I don't have a problem with state ownership, in my personal opinion. The only thing I have a problem with is if they try to do, for instance, if I'm not mistaken, don't Chelsea have part of their owners are state owned? Isn't part of their
Well,
owners state owned?
part of your football club state owned.
Yeah, I understand that.
You're
But
sponsored by the
Well,
Emirates. You're
by
saying
the
the
Emirates.
Emirates.
no, but I understand that everybody to a certain degree is state owned.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
what I'm
Some
saying
more
is,
than others.
if you have state ownership like Newcastle's owners, as long as you're following the rules, there's not a problem. Newcastle are following the rules. Newcastle are not going crazy and getting themselves into debt and it's all right, we'll get a fine, or we get done from the transfer window for a bit. Like, they're actually following the rules. When they're in danger with PSR, they're selling players, trying to gather up funds, when realistically they could outspend all of us and still have so much left over to just spend on it whatever else. So I'm all about football clubs and owners spending correctly and staying within the rules. That's the state ownership thing has never been a problem as long as they're staying within the rules. I just have a problem when owners are like trying to find little whatever it's called, little ways to get out of things and loopholes. That's the word. When they're trying to find loopholes and trying to get away from the rules, and do you know what I mean? Trying to find these little...
Keith here in the comments says the property side has the same issue, i.e., regulations with countries owning land within the UK. Look, if this is going to become an initiative from the UK to stop foreign investment, and the aim of it, and let me just get this out, the aim of it is to start lowering the cost for everyone who lives in the UK, the working class people, to be able to afford homes, bring cost of living down, whatever it may be. If that's the agenda, then I'm kind of okay with it being across the board. The problem is, we know it isn't going to be across the board. We know that it's going to be rich fat cats filling their pockets in one end, and politicians who go into the job, with a little bit of wealth, that come out 10 years later as multimillionaires. We know exactly what's going on here. It's all about people lining their pockets personally. There's a super chat here that says the NBA outright bans sovereign funds owning teams. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, the point
but
is,
how does that matter? Because in the NBA, it's not like you can spend however way you want to spend.
Yeah.
You have a max cap anyways.
Yeah,
Regardless
like
of who your owner is, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. Like, it's very different in American sports. Like, we don't have a transfer market. You're not buying people's players and stuff like that. So, like, that's irrelevant.
This is from Sam, says, as a totally unbiased United fan, I'd welcome the new regulations.
Until you're linked with a Qatari owner.
Yeah, look, I look at it. That's the
nice.
thing. Everybody's a hypocrite. When it's one of the reasons when Newcastle, and I understand the other challenges people had towards Newcastle and City's owners and things that go on in those countries. And I understand the challenges there. At the same time, I'm not a hypocrite. It was when the Qatar World Cup was happening. People were like, Terry, you're not going to condemn it. And I was like, listen, there's things that go on there that I think are wrong. The same as there are things that go on in England that I think are wrong. Okay. However, I'm not going to condemn it and say nobody should go, because I was, in the end, offered an opportunity to go out there and work. And I took it. And I didn't want to look like the rest of those plebs on TV that were out there slagging it off whilst making the money out of it. And
like what it is, Terry, it's just virtue signaling, right? Like, everybody sees like what's popular online, and then they're like, okay, well, if I say this same thing that most people are saying, then I'll get traction, and then people will say, oh, you're such a good guy and stuff. But to be honest, like, I think as football fans, it's again like what we're kind of like pointing at is that we're selfish in terms of, the people that are going to point out all the bad stuff that, they don't like about these like Middle Eastern owners are people whose clubs are not going to be owned by them. But again, if like Tottenham, Liverpool, if any of these clubs, I remember when you guys were linked before Jim Ratcliffe got the club, you guys were linked to somebody, and that's who everybody wanted. Now, there were some people that were saying, no, we don't want human rights, but let's just be real. Yeah. The human right violations that they're doing, it doesn't necessarily affect us. So people do think about it in a selfish way because it's just what benefits their club. Right. And in my opinion,
it's also envy. You have to admit, like, if City were not as successful as they were the last 10 years, nobody would bat an eyelid, right? Like, that's just the reality of things.
I totally agree. But you see that selfishness everywhere. I've watched enough of those viral clips on YouTube of, people going around campuses in your country, Will, saying, Like, or do you believe in, I don't know, do you believe in white privilege? And the person says, yeah, it's a disgrace that, you know, we get this privilege. Are you willing to give your university spot up for somebody that's not white? And they go, well, I can't because, and suddenly you've seen it in the UK. You see those guys, and look, it is funny when they say, oh, we're you know, we're here, you're protesting to say refugees should come in, which by the way, I agree with in case anybody kicks off. And they say to them, okay, we want you to take, you know, you think people should take them in? Yeah, I'd take them in. We've got a form here. Would you fill it in, please, to take one in? Oh, I can't at the minute. I'm renting. I'll get in trouble.
Yeah.
It's that level of virtue signaling. Like, we all have our views and our opinions on what we like and don't like, but everybody always tries to make themselves look far more virtuous than they really are. And I do agree. That's what a lot of this is virtue signaling. But as also socialist governments don't believe in free markets. Again, I'm not even going to go into it that deep because it will turn politic. It's not a hard cap. You pay luxury taxes over cap. Okay, on in the NBA, I don't follow. I don't really know the rules around that. I just watch a bit of netball every now and then. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. Terry, can you talk about Onana's handball and red card? Well, it wasn't handball, was it? It was accidental. So therefore, so if you have a handball situation in UEFA and it isn't given, it tells you it's completely accidental because they give handballs for nearly everything. So Dynamo, you're not going to ruin my mood, my old mate. You're not going to ruin my mood once whatsoever. And make sure like buttons are being hit.